Hi friends, my name is Douglas Kruger. Let's talk about how to overcome poverty and become wealthy in your lifetime. I'm the author of a book titled, Is Your Thinking Keeping You Poor? 50 Ways the Rich Think Differently. If you're interested in the ideas in the book but you can't afford it, they are all available for free on my website, which is douglaskruger.co.za. Just go over to the articles tab. Now, folks, most of the ideas that I write and speak about when it comes to entrepreneurship and lifting people's levels of wealth tend to be on a higher level. They tend to be for leadership and CEOs. But I posed myself a challenge the other day, which was, what do you do if, like so many millions of South Africans, you are facing grinding levels of poverty? You don't even have a basic entry-level job. How can you practically go about escaping poverty? Let's talk about what it feels like to find yourself in a situation like that. When you are facing grinding poverty, it feels like the walls are closing in around you, that there's just nothing you can do, nothing that you can act upon to start lifting yourself out of your situation. Well, folks, no matter how dark it may seem at the time, and no matter how you may feel like you have no options, there are always two things that you can and should do. And these two things can and will lift you out of poverty if you do them faithfully and long enough. So let's talk about what they are. The first thing that you need to understand is that there are different ways of creating wealth depending on the level that you're at. Now, I'll share with you the highest level of wealth creation, and it's just a little bit of background that helps us as the introduction to this idea. The most wealthy men and women in all of human history have done this one thing. They have divorced the link between the hours worked and the amount of money earned. So in other words, even if you have a very high-level, high-paying job, there are only so many hours in which you can work during a day. The super wealthy, the mega wealthy, have found clever strategic ways to get rid of that link. They are worth more in every hour of the day. And it's not necessarily about how hard they're working in that hour. Now that's a high-level overview of the idea. Let's take it down to its lowest entry level. So again, say for example you don't have a job, you don't have the option of studying further or anything down those lines. Principle number one is this: raise your personal value. Raise your personal value. Now, when we think of that idea, the first thing we tend to think of is we think university degree. And again, tens of millions of South Africans simply don't have that option. I didn't have the option of studying full-time for a varsity degree. What I did personally was I worked a full-time day job and then I paid my own way to study through UNISA in the evenings. But now here's the interesting thing, folks. Having a university degree does not necessarily guarantee wealth. Don't get me wrong, it's a good step and it's a good idea. But there are many wealthy people around the world and in South Africa who don't even have high school certificates. It is not a barrier to your wealth if you can't afford a formal education. Instead, we need to find other ways to raise our value. Now let's start at the very simplest levels. I mean, say for example that you can read but not very well. To raise your personal value, how about getting hold of some very basic books and teaching yourself to read a little bit better? How about, for example, joining a Toastmasters club, a public speaking organization? Yes, they do charge a fee for what they do. It's a very small fee, but in many cases, when people come to them from poorer communities and so forth, they find ways to teach you skills like public speaking and leadership. And it's those skills, the soft skills, the human skills, things like your ability to read, to speak to a group of people, to put forward an idea, and especially to lead others. When you add those things to your own abilities, you are raising your personal value. I promise you, people will notice. So that's principle number one. Principle number two is this: repay trust with excellence. Repay trust with excellence. I like to think of this as what I call the Joseph principle. You've heard the story of Joseph, who had a bit of a rough start to life. He was sold into slavery by his brothers. And I mean, imagine a scenario like that. You are powerless, you are forced to work and so forth. Now, in Joseph's case, in two different scenarios, first as a slave in a household, and second in a prison, and then moving on to Pharaoh's kingdom. What he did every time was he repaid any small amount of trust that was shown in him with excellence. So let's take a very small example of this. Say that you managed to get a job as a cashier, or say, for example, that you're flipping burgers at McDonald's, or say that someone has allowed you to dig a hole in their backyard. Basic things. Our temptation at that level is to say, well, this doesn't matter that much, and to repay trust with a cavalier attitude, with arrogance, with sarcasm, heck, steal something while you're there. It's the worst thing you can possibly do. If you take the small amount of trust that is shown in you and you repay it with excellence, what happens is you're given a little bit more trust. Now I can allow you to do that work while I'm not watching you. And if I learn that in my absence you have once again repaid my small amount of trust with excellence, you've been an excellent steward of the small thing that I've given you to do, I can give you more. And people start to notice and people start to talk about you. You grow a reputation for being a trustworthy individual. Now, when I speak at the highest levels of industry, I speak about how trust speeds up business. Everything works faster when trust is in place. When trust is removed, we need more rules, we need more people watching people, and everything works slower. When trust is in place, things speed up for you. You will start to find as you raise your personal value and as you repay trust with excellence, that it starts feeling like the world has handed you a few more levers. It's like suddenly you can act upon things and your world is getting a little bit bigger, and it will start slowly, very slowly. But eventually you will see that it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it happens faster and faster. There is an exponentially multiplying effect when you raise your value and repay trust with excellence. Now, folks, these principles don't rely on you having money. They rely on the type of person that you are. And that's something that you can act upon at any level of poverty or prosperity. Let's take an example of one that does cost a small amount of money. Do you have a library card? 99% of South Africans do not go into bookstores and pay money to buy books. So folks, if you are part of the 1% who sees the value in buying books to better yourself, you are ahead of 99% of South Africans. But perhaps you can't afford the book. So once again, I would recommend going onto the website, go to my articles tab, douglaskruger.co.za, read this one for free, chapter by chapter. But how about getting a library card? If you have a library card, you have access to the universe of information. It's not just the books that are available in the library. You will have internet access. And with internet access, you can watch videos and read articles about leadership, public speaking, entrepreneurship, raising your personal value. And the more you do that, the more levers become available to you. Now, folks, the way that I always think about this one is the wealth gradation, going from poverty to extreme wealth, implies graduating to new problems. So I'd like you to know that in advance. Once you've gotten past entry-level problems like basic poverty and can I feed my family at night, you graduate to the next level of problem. That's not a bad thing, that's how it works. Eventually you get to the point where your problems are, I pay too much tax and my Lamborghini costs too much money to run. That's the kind of problem I want you to have. But make no mistake, wealthy people have problems, they're just a different kind. So there is more information that you need to seek out as you graduate to each new level of prosperity. But if you are at the very bottom level and trying to get to step number 1, grade 1, just get out of basic poverty, those two principles, raise your personal value, repay trust with excellence. They are sufficient, they will get you there. There's more we can talk about beyond this point, but for now, I'd like you to share those principles, I'd like you to buy into those principles, and spread the message as far as you possibly can. The book is available for free, and if you feel that this message will help South Africans, please share the living daylights out of it. Poverty is a ridiculous problem for our species to have. Let's move on to more interesting problems.